Welcome to this section of the course. We're going to begin our journey by talking about the fundamentals of PHP. It's the language WordPress is written with. If you already know PHP, feel free to skip this section. Nothing groundbreaking will be taught in this section. So, what is PHP? It's a programming language that runs on servers to process web pages. Let's dive deeper into this definition. First and foremost, PHP is a programming language. A programming language allows us to give instructions to a machine. We can tell a machine to register a new user, upload a file, or process a purchase. There are dozens of programming languages available. It's possible to create a site with any of them. PHP sticks out from the bunch because it focuses on web development. Every feature it introduces is targeted at making web development easier. PHP powers over 79% of websites. So, for every 10 sites you visit, 8 of them are written with PHP. Its popularity and feature set make it the best language for WordPress to be written in. Let's talk about how PHP works. PHP can be installed on a server. A server is a computer that provides resources for running programs. Servers can be purchased, or we can convert our personal machines into one. In our case, we're going to be using a server to run PHP for web development. We can write PHP code inside a PHP file. Code written inside this file will perform any task we tell it to. PHP will only run on the machine it was installed on. If we install it on a server, it will only run on the server. It never runs in the browser. So, you may be wondering, how does the user know when something happens? PHP does something that no other language does out of the box. It will produce an HTML file. This step is optional, but in most cases, you will want to produce an HTML file. This file can be sent over to the browser. From that point, the browser will render the HTML file. PHP plays very nicely with HTML. A prerequisite to this course was knowledge of HTML. Since you know HTML, you already know how to write some PHP. This section is going to cover the basics of PHP code. Let's start by creating a PHP file. Currently, I'm pointing my editor to the WordPress project. I want you to do the same. If you forgot where your site is stored, let's quickly review how to find your project. You can open local to grab the full path. On the local dashboard, you can click on the button below the site's title. This button should open the File Explorer. As a reminder, WordPress's files can be found under the app/public directory. This directory is where your editor should be pointed to. After you've got your editor sorted, let's create a file. Inside the root directory of the WordPress site, create a file called test.php. PHP files have the PHP extension. Without this extension, our server will not process the PHP code written inside the file. Typically, it's considered bad practice to create files in the root directory of a WordPress site. However, I want to review the fundamentals of PHP. Before we dive into the code of WordPress, we should have a basic understanding of the PHP language. We're creating this file independently from WordPress. As we discussed before, PHP can render HTML. Therefore, we're allowed to write valid HTML inside this file. Let's create an h1 tag with some dummy text. Under normal circumstances, we would wrap this tag with HTML and body tags. For demonstration purposes, we'll keep it simple. The next step is to open this file in the browser. If you haven't already, turn your server on. Otherwise, we won't be able to view this file. Let's check out the site in our browser. Behind the scenes, Nginx is delivering this page. If we look closely at the URL, we're not accessing a specific file. By default, Nginx will hand over the request to WordPress. We can access a file by typing its name after the domain. In the address bar, we can type the name of the file. By default, the server is pointing to our WordPress site. Let's try accessing the test.php file. After doing so, we are presented with the file. Awesome! We don't need to type the full path to the file. The web server will automatically search for the file in the app/public directory. This feature is the main benefit of using a server. We don't need to type full paths in the address bar. A server can automatically serve files from a specific directory. We've successfully created our first PHP file. PHP files have the PHP extension. Inside a PHP file, we can write HTML. Does this mean PHP is running on the browser? The answer is no. To better understand, let's take a peek at the files received by the browser. On your keyboard, press the F12 key. This key should open the Chrome Developer Tools. If this toolset doesn't open, you can manually open this tool by clicking on the three dots top right corner. The Developer Tools can be found under the More Tools Developer Tools menu. If you're not familiar with the Developer Tools, that's perfectly fine. I'll give a brief introduction. The Developer Tools are a suite of tools for debugging a site in the browser. For example, there's a panel called Elements. This panel will give you a preview of the HTML document in the browser. As you can see, our H1 tag can be found in the document. Additional tags have been added. By default, Chrome will inject the HTML, head, and body tags if they're missing from the document. The Elements panel is cool, but it's not what we're interested in. Let's shift our focus to the Network panel. This panel allows us to view files received by the server. Images, videos, CSS, and HTML files are some examples of files that can be sent by a server. It's possible this panel may be empty. If that's the case, refresh the page. After some time, the Network panel will display a table of files. You may receive different files. That's perfectly fine. The file we're interested in is the test.php file. In this table, various pieces of information are given to us, such as the file size. Let's focus our attention on the type column. This column will tell us the file type. For example, if we were viewing an image, the file type could be PNG or JPEG. For the test.php file, the type is set to document. The document type is the file type for an HTML file. Mysterious, right? Clearly, we are asking for a PHP file. Behind the scenes, PHP has produced an HTML file. This concept is important to understand. Whenever we ask for a PHP file, the server will process the code inside a PHP file. After it executes the code, the output of a PHP file is HTML. The HTML file is sent to the browser. Browsers will never see a line of PHP code. It'll always receive HTML. For this reason, the Developer Tools categorize the file as an HTML file. So far, we've got nothing exciting. Let's start learning some of PHP's features in the following lecture.